Case 1. Ariel Robinson gained recognition after winning Season 20 of Worst Cooks in America on the Food Network. Many viewers remembered her as someone who made people laugh on TV. But in January 2021, people heard her name again for an unfortunate reason that had nothing to do with cooking or fun. On January 14, 2021, emergency workers rushed to her home in Simpsonville, South Carolina. They were called because her adopted 3-year-old daughter, Victoria Rose Smith, had been found unresponsive. When doctors checked the little girl, they discovered she had many injuries on her body. The doctors explained that the injuries came from strong blows, and they sadly confirmed that she had passed away. This moment started a long and very serious investigation. Everything in Ariel's life changed from that point on. As the investigation progressed, more information slowly emerged through reports, interviews, and court testimony. Prosecutors explained that the child's injuries were caused by repeated hitting over time. Ariel's husband, Jerry Austin Robinson, spoke with investigators and shared details about what he had seen at home. He said that he had seen Ariel use a belt to punish the child. Later, he pleaded guilty to helping in the crime by not stopping the harm. His words and the physical evidence helped investigators understand what had happened inside the home. During Ariel's trial in May 2022, experts came to court to explain their findings. They showed medical results, photos, and other pieces of evidence to the jury. These experts talked about the injuries and what had caused them. Their explanations were simple but very serious. People in the courtroom listened carefully because the details were painful to hear. Witnesses also spoke about what they saw and heard on the day the child was found. The whole room stayed quiet as each person shared their part of the story. After the jury listened to all the evidence and heard from all the witnesses, they reached their final decision. They found Ariel Robinson guilty of homicide by child abuse. On May 12, 2022, the judge announced her sentence, life in prison. Later, in 2025, news outlets reported that Ariel asked the court to give her a new trial, but the court said no and denied her request. Case 2. Jeff Henderson's life changed powerfully, but it did not start in a good place. Jeff was arrested in 1988 for selling illegal drugs, and he later served almost 10 years in federal prison. He entered prison as a young man with no clear direction, but something surprising happened during his time there. A small kitchen job gave Jeff a new skill, a new focus, and a new sense of hope. This single change became the first step toward a completely different future. Inside the prison kitchen, Jeff learned how to cook. He paid attention to every simple task, from washing vegetables to preparing meals. The more he worked, the more he understood that cooking made him feel calm and strong. He practiced every day and slowly built real talent. This new ability gave him a way to rebuild his life. It helped him see that he could return to the outside world with something useful, something he could grow into a real career. When Jeff finished his sentence in the late 1990s, he worked hard to enter professional kitchens. He started with small duties, moving from one job to another, always pushing forward. His hard work paid off when he became an executive chef at Café Bellagio in Las Vegas. He later served as chef de cuisine at Caesar's Palace, a major achievement for someone once trapped in a life that led to prison. Case 3. Valentino Luchin's life shows how a chef can move from running a restaurant to dealing with very serious legal trouble. He once owned an Italian restaurant in the Bay Area called Ottavio. Many people enjoyed eating there, but the business closed in 2016. After the closure, Valentino began to struggle with money. His debts grew larger, and he felt very stressed. In 2018, he made a choice that changed his life. He walked into a Citibank in Orinda and passed a note asking for money. He was arrested soon after and later served a 1-year jail sentence for that crime. Years passed, but the problems did not go away. In September 2025, Valentino was arrested again in San Francisco. Police said he went to 3 different banks in one day and used notes to demand money. Cameras inside the banks helped officers identify him, and he was taken into custody. As of November 24, 2025, he is facing several robbery charges and attempted robbery. He has said he is not guilty and is being held on $200,000 bail in the San Francisco County Jail. The case has not reached trial yet, and the court is still working through the details. Valentino's lawyer is trying to get him into a mental health program instead of a regular trial. The lawyer says that Valentino was dealing with depression and felt hopeless after a job offer he expected was suddenly taken away. The lawyer believes these struggles played a big part in his actions. Prosecutors, on the other hand, point to how quickly the 3 bank visits happened and say this shows he planned what he was doing. The judge must now decide which path is right. Before we move on to the next case, if you've found this video interesting so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Case 4. Juan Carlos Cruz. Many people first knew him as a friendly chef on the Food Network. He was the host of a show called Calorie Commando, where he taught people how to make meals with fewer calories. He also wrote a cookbook called The Ironic Love Cookbook. On television, he spoke calmly, smiled often, and showed families how to cook in a simple and warm way. Because of this, people felt he was safe and trusted his advice in the kitchen. But in May 2010, everything changed for him. Los Angeles police arrested him after learning he tried to hire people to harm his wife. The case began when 2 homeless men approached police officers. These men explained that Juan Carlos Cruz had met with them more than once. They told police that he gave them clear instructions about what he wanted them to do. Police later confirmed that Cruz had even given them tools, including box cutters, and shared personal details about his home. This information helped officers understand that he was serious about his plan. Reports also showed that Cruz and his wife had been struggling for many years with fertility treatments. They had spent a lot of money trying to have a child, but nothing worked. Cruz later told investigators that he wrongly believed his wife was suffering deeply and that ending her life would take away her pain. This explanation shocked the public, and many people found it hard to understand. As police gathered more proof, the case moved quickly. Investigators collected taped conversations and other information showing that Cruz explained his plan clearly and calmly. Even though his wife was never harmed, the plan itself was strong enough for the court to treat it as a very serious matter. In August 2010, Cruz chose to plead no contest to the charge of solicitation of murder. This meant he did not fight the evidence, but he also did not fully traditionally admit guilt. It allowed the case to move forward without a long trial. In December 2010, the judge decided on the punishment. Juan Carlos Cruz was sentenced to 9 years in a California state prison. A more serious charge of attempted murder was dropped because he agreed to the plea. Juan Carlos Cruz was paroled in December 2018 after serving 8 years of his 9-year sentence. Case 5. Tony Hu was known across Chicago as a very successful chef and restaurant owner. Many people liked his food, and his restaurants were always busy. He owned several Chinese restaurants, and his name became very common in the food world. People saw him as someone who worked hard and built a large business in the city. But in 2016, everything in his life changed because of a serious federal investigation. The U.S. government found out that from the years 2010 to 2014, Tony Hu hid more than $9.8 million that his restaurants earned in cash. This money was not reported to the people who collect taxes. Because the money was hidden, the government said he broke the law. The government charged him with wire fraud and money laundering, which are 2 very serious financial crimes. In May 2016, Tony Hu stood in court and said he was guilty. This moment marked the beginning of a major fall for someone who once had a strong and respected place in the Chicago food world. Many people were surprised because they knew him mainly as a chef and business owner, not someone connected to crime. As the investigation continued, federal agents studied his business records. They found that some workers were paid with cash and the money was never reported. They also found that some restaurant sales were not written down the right way. This made the restaurant's income look smaller than it really was. By doing this, the business paid less tax than it should have. In court, prosecutors showed documents and other proof explaining how the money moved around. Many people who supported Tony Hu came to the courtroom to watch and show that they cared about him. Even with all the support, the judge explained that the law must be followed by everyone, no matter how popular they are. On November 18, 2016, Tony Hu was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in federal prison. This kind of sentence allowed him to earn what is called good time credit, meaning he would serve about 10.5 months. The court also ordered him to pay a fine of $100,000. Before this sentence, Tony Hugh had already paid more than $1 million to the state of Illinois to cover the unpaid taxes. Case 6. Sarma Melgalis' journey shows how a famous restaurant owner can fall into serious legal trouble. She once ran Pure Food and Wine in New York, a plant-based restaurant that many people loved. Customers came from different places to enjoy the meals she created, and many people online admired her ideas. For a long time, it looked like her business was doing very well. From the outside, everything seemed calm and successful. But inside the business, serious money problems were slowly building up, and these problems were much bigger than most people knew. Workers at her restaurant said they were not getting paid for their hard work. Some people said they waited a long time for their salaries, and this caused stress inside the restaurant. The taxes for the business were also not being taken care of properly, which created even more trouble. Later reports showed that more than $1.6 million had been moved out of the business accounts. This was a very large amount of money, and it made the situation even more serious. These issues kept growing until they became too big to hide, and many people began asking questions about where the money had gone. Things became even worse in 2016, when Sarma left New York with her husband at the time. She stayed away from the police for several weeks, and nobody knew exactly where she was. On May 12, 2016, officers found her in a hotel in Tennessee. She had made an online food order, and that order helped police locate her. After she was arrested, prosecutors charged her with grand larceny, tax fraud, and a scheme to defraud. These charges were connected to the unpaid wages, unpaid taxes, and the missing business funds. By this time, her restaurant had already closed, and many workers were still waiting for money they had earned, but never received. In May 2017, Sarma pleaded guilty to the charges. The court sentenced her to nearly 4 months in jail and 5 years of probation. She went to jail, completed her time, and later spoke about the pressure she felt during her business problems. She also said her former husband had a strong influence on her decisions. But the court documents made the important facts very clear. Money was taken from the business, workers were not paid, and taxes were left unpaid for years. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate the support. Case 7. Carol Kachinski's story begins with her long career in the food world. Carol spent many years working with gluten-free cooking, teaching people how to make meals that were gentle on the stomach. She appeared on TV, shared easy recipes, and created a magazine called Simply Gluten-Free. Many families trusted her work and used her ideas in their kitchens. For a long time, her life was focused on food, kindness, and helping people enjoy meals without worry. Everything she did made her seem calm, friendly, and very professional. But everything changed when Carol traveled to Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. She joined the large crowd that went toward the U.S. Capitol building. Later, investigators learned that she had entered a restricted area around the building on that day. This was a very important and protected place where regular visitors were not allowed to go. When she stepped into that restricted area, it placed her at the center of a federal case. It was a huge difference from her normal life of cooking shows and magazine work. As time passed, the case continued to grow. The U.S. government collected different kinds of evidence. They gathered video recordings, photos, and location information that showed exactly where she had been during the event. Carol saw all the evidence and understood what it meant. Instead of fighting the case, she chose to take responsibility for her actions. On October 27, 2022, Carol pleaded guilty to one charge called entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds. This charge is a federal misdemeanor. It may sound simple, but it is very serious. It brings real punishment, and it stays on a person's record. Many people who followed her career felt surprised because she had spent years building a safe and positive name in the food community. Now her name appeared in court documents connected to a national event. The judge made the final decision on June 27, 2023. Carol received 20 days of incarceration, 1 year of supervised release, and a $525 fine. Case 8. Justin Sutherland. Most people first knew him as a skilled and friendly chef from shows like Top Chef and Fast Foodies. He also became well known in the Twin Cities for his restaurants and his work in the local food scene. Fans saw him as creative, confident, and proud of his roots. But everything changed on June 28, 2024, when police in St. Paul, Minnesota, responded to a call involving him and his girlfriend. That day marked the start of a serious legal case that placed him at the center of national attention. Police said the call came from his girlfriend, who told officers she feared for her life. Reports from that night explained that she believed Justin had pointed a gun at her, placed his hands around her neck, and damaged her phone during an argument. Officers later confirmed that she had already called for help earlier that same day. When police spoke to her again, the details of the incident became clearer, and Justin Sutherland was arrested on June 28. Days later, he was arrested a second time for violating a no-contact order connected to the case. The courtroom became the next stage of his story. On October 22, 2024, Justin Sutherland pleaded guilty to 1 count of threats of violence. The more serious parts of the original charge were later treated as a gross misdemeanor as part of the plea agreement. His case continued through the fall until the judge decided on a final sentence. On December 13 to 14, 2024, Justin Sutherland stood before a judge in Ramsey County Court. The judge sentenced him to 2 years of probation, along with 60 days of electronic home monitoring, which meant he would serve time under strict supervision at home. He was also ordered to complete domestic abuse counseling, anger management programs, avoid alcohol and drugs, and never possess firearms. These terms were clearly stated as conditions he must follow to remain out of jail. Case 9. Eduardo Garcia is known today as one of the most respected chefs in Mexico City. Many people admire him for his work at Maximo Bistro, a restaurant that became very famous. But before he became a well-known chef, Eduardo lived a life filled with struggle and hardship. When he was young, he moved to the United States as a migrant worker. He worked long hours and tried his best to survive. Life was very difficult for him during those years, and he made choices that later caused him great pain. In the mid-1990s, Eduardo took part in a liquor store robbery in San Francisco. It was a moment that changed everything for him. After the incident, Eduardo later turned himself in to the police. He faced serious charges in court. Reliable sources say he was convicted of aggravated assault related to the crime. This sent him into the U.S. justice system, something he never expected to experience. It became a turning point in his early life. Once he was convicted, Eduardo was sent to a U.S. prison. Some reports say he served 3 years, and others say he served 4, but all trusted sources agree that he spent several years behind bars. For a young man far from home, prison was a very difficult place. He had time to think about his actions and the future he wanted. When he finally completed his sentence, he was deported back to Mexico. Returning home with no money, no job, and a painful past was extremely hard for him. He had to start again from zero. Back in Mexico, Eduardo knew he needed to rebuild his life. He found work in kitchens, often doing simple chores like washing dishes, peeling vegetables, and preparing basic ingredients. He worked quietly and paid attention to everything happening around him. He learned from chefs who had more experience and slowly improved his skills. Cooking became the path that helped him move forward. Step by step, he began to grow. Over time, Eduardo went from being a helper in the kitchen to becoming a leader. He continued to train, work harder, and learn from everyone around him. His dedication brought him new opportunities. In 2011, he finally opened Maximo Bistro in Mexico City. The restaurant quickly became popular and earned high praise. Many people now see him as proof that someone can rise again even after a very difficult past. Case 10. Larry Forgione's story begins with his long career in the food world. Larry spent many years cooking, teaching, and helping shape modern American cooking. Many people respected him because he worked hard, opened restaurants, wrote books, and trained other cooks. His name became well known, and many people saw him as someone who brought new ideas to the kitchen. For most of his life, Larry focused on food, creativity, and sharing good meals with others. But in 2018, something happened that completely changed his life. On February 24, 2018, Larry was driving in Santa Barbara, California. When he reached an intersection, he went through a red light. A 90-year-old man named Gilbert Ramirez was crossing the street at that moment. Larry's car hit him, and the man later died from his injuries. This single moment placed Larry in the center of a very serious criminal case. As time passed, the case moved through the court system. Police officers collected many kinds of evidence to help understand exactly what happened. They gathered traffic camera videos, looked at photos, and spoke to people who saw the accident. All the information showed that Larry went through the red light and caused the accident. Larry did not plan to harm anyone, but the law says that when a person dies in a traffic incident, the driver must face legal responsibility. That is why the case continued step by step. On April 18, 2019, a jury made their decision. They found Larry guilty of involuntary vehicular manslaughter. It is a painful situation for both families, the family who lost someone and the driver who must now face the results of that mistake. On July 16, 2019, the judge announced the punishment. Larry Forgione was sentenced to 60 days in jail. He also received 3 years of probation, which means he had to follow strict rules for a long time. In addition, he was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service and had his driver's license suspended. Case 11. Chef Ron Freeman. People in Los Angeles know him today as a chef, a food creator, and the man who built Mama Pat's Gumbo and Grill and a well-known ramen brand. Children, adults, and families in his community see him as someone who brings joy through food. But before he became the Chef Ron people celebrate today, his life was very different. In the mid-1990s, when he was still trying to find his way, police in Gardena, California, found a small amount of crack cocaine in the trash can of the hot dog cart he was using for work. That single discovery changed everything for him. After the case moved through court, he pled no contest and was given a sentence of 3 years in prison. It was a hard moment, and it forced him to look closely at his life. While Ron was serving his sentence at Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, he had a lot of quiet time to think. He thought about how one choice had created a big problem. He also thought about what kind of man he wanted to be when he finished his time in prison. He spent many days planning, learning, and trying to understand how he could make better choices. He knew he needed a fresh start, and he wanted to return home with a plan that would help him grow instead of falling backward. In 1998, after serving his sentence, he was released. Walking out of the prison gates, Ron made a clear promise to himself. He would build a life filled with better actions, better goals, and better results. When Ron finally came home, he turned fully toward food. He always loved cooking, and he decided that this love would guide the rest of his life. He began cooking again, starting with simple meals and slowly working his way toward bigger ideas. He thought about the flavors he grew up with and the meals that brought comfort to his family. His grandmother, Patricia Mama Pat Darby, inspired him deeply. Her cooking filled the home with warmth, and Ron wanted to share that feeling with the world. Over time, he opened Mama Pat's Gumbo and Grill, a place built on family traditions. Later, he created Mama Pat's Foods, which launched a ramen line made for prison commissaries, giving people inside access to better meals. Ron worked step by step, growing his brand with care and heart. Case 12. John Charles Sober worked at a lodge inside Crater Lake National Park in Oregon. The area is known for calm water, tall trees, and visitors who come to relax and enjoy nature. Every day, John cooked meals for guests who stayed at the lodge. His work was simple and steady, and nothing about his daily life looked dangerous or stressful. But one day, everything changed when park rangers were asked to check on him because something seemed wrong. When the rangers arrived, they tried to speak with John and understand what was happening. This moment should have been easy, like a short talk to clear up a problem. Instead, it became a stressful situation very quickly. John refused to follow their commands. He did not calm down when they asked him to. Reports say he pushed the rangers, fought back, and used force, even when they told him to stop again and again. The more he resisted, the more dangerous the moment became. Because the situation was getting out of control, more officers rushed to the lodge to help. What started as a simple check turned into a serious physical struggle. Crater Lake National Park is federal land, which means the officers who work there are federal officers. When someone resists them with force, the law treats it as a federal crime. So John's case did not stay small or local. Instead, it moved straight into the federal court system, where punishments are often very strict, and the rules are very clear. Once the case reached court, the judge looked at all the details. The judge explained that John's actions put the rangers in danger and could not be ignored. In the end, John was convicted. His sentence was 18 months in federal prison. After he finishes that sentence, he must also complete 3 years of supervised release. Case 13. William Wynn Kine works as a sushi chef in Chesapeake, Virginia. People in the area knew him from the restaurant where he prepared meals and worked long hours in the kitchen. But on March 10, 2017, everything in his life changed. On that day, William killed his 39-year-old wife, Kin Thuza Shui, inside their home. Court records explain that he used his hands and a pair of pajama pants during the attack. This act turned a private home into the center of a serious criminal case and placed William in front of the justice system. As investigators moved deeper into the case, the truth became clear. Police gathered statements, medical reports, and digital evidence that showed what happened inside the home that morning. There were no strangers involved and no confusion about the events. The details pointed back to William, and the court process that followed was long and emotional. He tried to defend himself by saying he was not in a clear mental state, but the court did not accept that argument. On February 27, 2021, a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. It was a charge that carried a heavy punishment because the crime was intentional and violent. The final sentence came later in 2021. The court ordered William to serve 45 years in prison, but the judge suspended 15 years, leaving 30 years for him to spend behind bars. Case 14. Kioshiro Yamamoto, once known as the head sushi chef at The Hump, a restaurant inside the Santa Monica airport. He prepared fish with skill, worked closely with his team, and served customers who expected high-quality meals. But his name entered national news when federal agents discovered that The Hump had been serving meat from the endangered SEI whale, which is fully protected under U.S. law. This discovery opened a federal case that changed his career and reputation. The investigation began when undercover agents visited the restaurant and were given whale meat during a tasting menu. Experts tested the meat and confirmed it came from a protected species. Once the evidence was clear, federal prosecutors filed charges. In 2013, a federal grand jury indicted The Hump, its parent company, and its chefs. Reports stated that Yamamoto took part in receiving and preparing the whale meat. The restaurant shut down in 2010, soon after the public learned about the case. Yamamoto later entered a guilty plea to charges related to conspiracy and the sale of protected marine animals. The case moved through the federal court system, where Kioshiro Yamamoto accepted responsibility for his actions. On May 18, 2015, a judge sentenced him to 2 years of probation, a $5,000 fine, and 200 hours of community service. Case 15. Anthony Milan Ross was known in Arizona as a vegan chef and a motivational speaker who often talked about healthy living. But his public image completely changed after a tragic event on December 25, 2017. On that Christmas Day, police in Phoenix, Arizona, responded to a call that led them to a heartbreaking scene. Ross had taken the lives of his estranged wife, Iris Ross, who was 38 years old, and their 2 children, Nigel, who was 11, and Honora, who was only 10 months old. The crime shocked the community and quickly became one of the most widely reported family murder cases in the state. During the investigation, police found strong evidence that pointed directly to Ross. According to reports, he shot his wife outside their apartment complex, and later, officers discovered the 2 children inside the home, also dead. The details of the case were so serious that the courtroom was filled with strong emotions during the trial. Prosecutors explained each step of the timeline, showing video, messages, and witness statements that supported their case. The jury listened as experts and officers described what happened that day and how the crime unfolded. Ross also faced charges for assaulting a peace officer during the police response. On November 3, 2025, after reviewing all the evidence, a Maricopa County jury found Anthony Milan Ross guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was also found guilty of several counts of aggravated assault. The conviction closed a long legal process that began in 2017. Case 16. Nancy Crampton Brophy's case became one of the most talked-about trials in Oregon. She was known as a romance writer who created stories about love and complicated relationships. But her real life took a shocking turn when she was connected to the death of her husband, Daniel Brophy, a chef and longtime teacher at the Oregon Culinary Institute. Daniel was a gentle and well-liked instructor who taught cooking for many years. When he was found dead on June 2, 2018, inside a classroom at the school, the community was left in shock and confusion. Police started searching for answers right away. As they looked through Daniel's life, they learned that his wife had bought gun parts online and had searched for information about weapons. Investigators also found that the couple had money problems, and Daniel had life insurance policies that could bring in large amounts of money if he passed away. These details made officers look more closely at Nancy. As weeks went by, more information pointed toward her, and she was later arrested for Daniel's death. The case gained national attention because she was a writer who once published a crime essay. In May 2022, after a long trial filled with witnesses, videos, and written records, the jury found Nancy guilty of second-degree murder. The judge later sentenced her on June 13, 2022 to life in prison with the chance for parole after 25 years. Case 17. Sharon Richardson's story begins with her life in New York, long before she became known as a chef or a community leader. Sharon lived through many years of painful abuse in a violent relationship. In the middle of this harm, a tragic event happened. She was involved in the death of her abuser, and the court held her responsible. Sharon was convicted in a domestic violence-related case and sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. This sentence sent her into a long chapter that changed her life forever. During her years in prison, Sharon began to rebuild herself. She found work in the kitchen and learned how to cook. Cooking gave her focus, calm moments, and a sense of strength. She discovered that food could bring comfort, even in a place filled with limits and rules. Day by day, she practiced, listened, learned, and grew. Instead of letting prison break her, she used the time to build new skills and new hope. After serving 20 years, Sharon was released in 2010, stepping into a world that looked very different from the one she left behind. After her release, Sharon chose not to hide from her past. Instead, she used it to help others. She started a nonprofit called Re-Entry Rocks, which supports women coming home from prison. She also created a catering business called Just Soul Catering, giving jobs to women who needed a fresh start. Sharon understood how hard it is to begin again, and she wanted other women to have support, guidance, and a safe space to grow. Her work showed people across New York that someone with a painful history could still lift others and create real change. Case 18. Cora was known as the first female Iron Chef on television, and many people admired her for her cooking skills. She wrote books, opened restaurants, and became very popular in the food world. Families watched her cook on TV and saw her as someone talented and confident in the kitchen. But in June 2012, her life took a turn when something serious happened. On June 17, 2012, in Santa Barbara, California, Cora accidentally drove into the back of another car. Police came to the scene, talked to everyone involved, and later arrested her for driving under the influence. This surprised many fans who were used to seeing her as a strong and successful chef. After the arrest, the case went into the legal system. Reports showed that Cora chose to plead no contest to driving with a blood alcohol level of 0.08 or higher. Pleading no contest meant she did not argue against the evidence, and she accepted the punishment the court would give. In the courtroom, the judge talked to her about the rules she needed to follow. Even though no one was badly hurt, the law views impaired driving as a very serious issue because it puts people at risk. The judge and the lawyers focused on the facts, such as the accident, her alcohol level, and the details of what happened that night. In August 2012, the judge announced her sentence. Cora received 3 years of probation, meaning she had to follow strict rules for a long time. She was also given a 120-day suspended jail sentence, which meant she would not go to jail if she followed all the rules given to her. She also had to pay a $2,386 fine and complete a 9-month alcohol education program. These steps were meant to help her learn from the situation and make safer choices in the future. If you enjoyed watching this video, please subscribe to my channel. I will be posting many more interesting crime documentaries on the channel daily. Thank you for watching.